On November 12, 1966, in Clinton, West Virginia, a group of gravediggers working in a cemetery spotted something strange. They glanced up from the work as something huge soared over their heads. It was a massive figure that was moving rapidly from tree to tree. The gravediggers would later describe this figure as a huge brown-winged human being. And this was the first reported sighting of what would come to be known as the Mothman. Just 3 days after the gravediggers' initial report, in nearby Point Pleasant, West Virginia, two couples noticed a wild-winged creature about 6 or 7 feet tall standing in front of the car they were all sitting in. Eyewitnesses Roger Scarberry and Steve Mallett told the local paper, the Point Pleasant Register, that the beast had bright red eyes about 6 inches apart, a wingspan of 10 feet, and the apparent urge to avoid the bright headlights of the car. And according to the witnesses, this creature was able to fly at incredible speeds, perhaps as fast as 100 miles an hour. They knew this only because it allegedly chased their vehicle to the outskirts of town while flying in the air, then scuttled into a nearby field and disappeared without a trace. Knowing how absurd this must have sounded to a local paper in a small Appalachian community in the 1960s, Scarberry insisted that the apparition couldn't have been a figment of his imagination. He assured the paper by telling them, "If I'd seen it while by myself, I wouldn't have said anything, but there were 4 of us who saw it." At first, reporters were skeptical. In the papers, they called the Mothman a bird and a mysterious creature. However, they did print Mallett's description, saying it was like a man with wings. But more and more sightings were reported in the Point Pleasant area over the next year as the legend of the Mothman took shape. The Gettysburg Times reported 8 additional sightings in the short span of 3 days after the first claims. This included 2 volunteer firefighters who said they saw a very large bird with large red eyes. Newell Partridge, a resident of Salem, West Virginia, claimed that he saw strange patterns appearing on his television screen one night, followed by a mysterious sound just outside of his home. Shining a flashlight toward the direction of the noise, Partridge supposedly witnessed 2 red eyes resembling bicycle reflectors looking back at him. And this story remains a popular one in the Mothman's legend, especially since it allegedly led to the disappearance of Partridge's dog. And to this day, some still believe that the fearsome beast took his beloved pet. Dr. Robert L. Smith, an associate professor of wildlife biology, dismissed the notation that a flying monster was staking out the town. Instead, he attributed the sightings to a sandhill crane, which stands almost as tall as the average man and has bright red flesh around its eyes. This explanation was compelling, especially given the number of early reports that had described the creature as bird-like. Some people hypothesized that this crane was deformed, especially if it resided in the TNT area, a name that locals gave to a series of nearby bunkers that were once used for manufacturing munitions during World War II. It has been suggested that these bunkers have leaked toxic materials into the neighboring wildlife reserve, possibly affecting nearby animals. Another theory suggests that the creation of the Mothman was the work of one very committed prankster who went so far as to hide in an abandoned World War II munitions plant, where some of the sightings occurred. This theory posits that when the national press ran with the Mothman story, people who lived in Point Pleasant began to panic. Locals became convinced that they were seeing the Mothman in birds and other large animals, even long after the prankster had given up the joke. And it's worth noting that the Mothman legend bears a resemblance to several demon archetypes found among those who have experienced sleep paralysis, which may suggest that these visions are nothing more than the embodiment of typical human fears, pulled from the depths of the unconscious and grafted onto real-life animal sightings when people panic. And then there are the paranormal explanations, a morass of complicated theories that weave together aliens, UFOs, and precognition. And these theories paint the Mothman as either a harbinger of doom or something way more sinister. On December 15th, 1967, just over a year after the first Mothman sighting, traffic was bad on the Silver Bridge. Originally built in 1928 to connect Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Gallipolis, Ohio, the bridge was packed with cars. This placed a strain on the bridge, which had been built in a time when cars were lighter. The Model T had weighed just 1,500 pounds, a modest sum compared to the 1967 average for a car, 4,000 pounds. The bridge's engineers hadn't been particularly imaginative, nor had they been especially cautious while creating this structure. The bridge's design featured very little redundancy, meaning that if one part failed, there was almost nothing in place to prevent other parts from failing as well. And on that cold December day, that was exactly what happened. Without warning, a single eye-bar near the top of the bridge on the Ohio side cracked. The chain snapped, and the bridge fell to pieces, plunging cars and pedestrians into the icy water of the Ohio River below. 46 people died, either by drowning or being crushed by the wreckage. And this is where many of the accounts of the Mothman being a harbinger of death comes in. In 1975, author John Keel conflated the Mothman sightings and the Silver Bridge disaster while creating his book, The Mothman Prophecies. He also incorporated UFO activity. His story took hold, and the town soon became iconic amongst conspiracy theorists, ufologists, and fans of the paranormal. And Point Pleasant's fame as the home of the Mothman legend hasn't waned in recent decades. In 2002, a movie based on Keel's book rekindled interest in the Mothman. And because of the idea that visitations from the Mothman predicted disaster, led to some believers making ties to the Chernobyl disaster of 1986, the Mexican swine flu outbreak in 2009, and the 2011 nuclear disaster of Fukushima, Japan. As for sightings of the actual Mothman, they've mostly declined since the late 1960s. But every so often, a sighting does emerge. In 2016, a man who just moved to Point Pleasant spotted a mysterious creature jumping from tree to tree. He claimed to the local reporters that he was unaware of the local legend of the Mothman until he allegedly spotted the beast himself. And whether these sightings are real or not, the Mothman can still be seen in Point Pleasant today in the form of a historical museum and also in the form of a 12-foot tall chrome polished statue complete with massive steel wings and ruby red eyes. Furthermore, a festival commemorating the Mothman's visits has taken place annually for years, a fun celebration that attracts locals and tourists alike. Every September, the festivities celebrate one of America's strangest local legends that still has people scratching their heads to this day. Okay, this is going to be all for today, guys. I hope you did enjoy that video. If you did, make sure to leave a like on it. Also, subscribe down below if you haven't already, because it's free and it helps me a whole lot. So definitely do that if you haven't already. I hope you really did enjoy this story, because I really enjoyed telling it for you guys. So if you did, make sure to leave it in the comments. What was your favorite part of the Mothman story? But with all that said, I hope you all have a great day, but this story is left in the past.